Oh, you can tell those who are so fired up for something, they got a countdown, and they'll get that countdown finally put up when they wake up in the morning on the day that the thing is happening. Bo Marchiante did that this morning. He is a NFL draft expert, writes at Sports Illustrated, SI Now, host of the NFL Draft Blast podcast as well, and has been on Halftime a couple times before. Bo, appreciate your time today. Happy NFL Draft Day 1. How much time have you put into this first round today?
A lot. It's finally come to fruition for all of us. The guys are in Las Vegas waiting to walk across stage and hug the commissioner. So it's an exciting time. I'm obviously finally glad it's here. It's Saturday, we wrap it up, and then we all get to exhale for a few days, and then we kind of start to dig in for 2023.
So quarterbacks and defensive ends were the big selections last year in the first round. Doesn't feel like quarterbacks are going to be the thing this year. But defensive end still is the biggest position of strength, do you think, in this first round at least, or is there another position you're looking at?
I think defensive end definitely stands out. When you look at the depth from the top to the bottom of the first round, it's very substantial. I think defensive backs also a deep position. Wide receivers a deep position. Offensive linemen, it's not a bad position in terms of depth, but maybe not as as deep as I think teams are accustomed to seeing. Running back, still a deep class, but we know it's kind of a diminished position. And then the quarterbacks, some arms are there, but they're just not on the prestigious level that we're accustomed to seeing. I've been joking around as I've been making the radio rounds we're accustomed to having these quarterbacks be the first-class guys on the flight. But they're kind of flying economy or coach like the rest of us this year in this 2022 NFL draft.
So what's your feel on that top pick? We were talking about it earlier. For a long time, it felt like Aiden Hutchinson was going to go first overall, and now you're seeing Treylon Walker moving into some mock drafts as the first overall pick, but it's going to be a defensive end pick first overall. Which one do you think goes?
Yeah, you've mentioned it. Walker and Hutchinson have been the two guys. Trent Baalke, their GM, prefers the body, I call it the height weight metrics that Trayvon Walker has, and they're banking on the upside, the untapped potential, if you will, if they take Walker. I think all signs are pointing to him, but even with that said, I think tonight when that first pick is called, I think it's going to be the Wolverine edge rusher agent Aiden Hutchinson. I just think that's going to be the pick, and I think this is a particular draft where it's not predicated on a once in a generation type prospect. This is really team-based, team-oriented, team preference. And I even think internally the reason why we haven't got more information out of Jacksonville is I'm sure there's a lot of debate on what guy they want and what direction they want to go. And after yesterday of them signing Cam Robinson, their tackle, to an extension after putting him on his second franchise tag, I thought Ikwanu at NC State or Evan Neal at Alabama, the two linemen, had a definite shot at being the number one pick. I think they tapered down that idea, getting Robinson signed to a long-term deal, but you can't even discount the notion that maybe they want two great bookends to protect last year's number one pick overall in Trevor Lawrence. But with all that said, a long way to go about it. I think Hutchinson still outlasts Walker as we build towards 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific for the 2022 draft.
And now, Bo, here in Arkansas, the person that everybody's going to be watching on Mel's big board to see when he does get taken off will be Treylon Burks. And I was looking at your mock draft on collegetopro.com earlier today, and you don't have Treylon as a first-round pick. You think he's going to be a day two guy. And while quarterback's not very deep, it does feel like this is a deep first-round wide receiver draft. Do you think that just what are your thoughts on Treylon, and why do you have him slipping to Friday?
Yeah, you know what? It was one of those things. First of all, I love Burks, and it's one of those things when you start doing a mock draft, you just start putting names to here, to there, to here, and lo and behold, you start looking back and you're like, who do we miss? Who slipped, or how did this guy not make it? And I had him going to the Cowboys for the longest time. Then I made some adjustments Listen, I would not be shocked if Burks comes off between 22 and 32. I think he's totally capable. I mean, when you start looking at all the teams that are so needy and hungry for productive young wideouts with some upside, Burks is right there in terms of all the other guys, and it's a deep class, and I think that's another reason why he could get pushed down to tomorrow night, is just in terms of how many productive wide receivers that are going to go. I think tonight when this first round goes, I think the defensive backs are going to get a little bit more push than what we realize. I think the edge guys are going to also take a bump up, and I think that just diminishes how many receivers that we're going to see go in round one. In terms of the quarterbacks, if I knew, I'd be a smart man, because I'd be laying down some bets and trying to make some cash capital. I think Kenny Pickett at 6 is the most likely. Tapper, their owner, he's a Pitt grad. We know Matt Rule recruited Kenny Pickett to play at Temple when Matt Rule was the head coach there. So I think there's a lot of dynamics in terms of familiarity and who they are and what they know about Pickett and where Tapper's from in terms of that University of Panthers degree. And then you look at Malik Willis, the hot name. I've been catching a lot of what for this, but I think Willis could be a guy that slips out of round one as well. And I know your listeners are like, wow, where did you find this guy? But I always like to joke around. A few years back when Johnny Manziel was going through the draft, I was on one Pacific radio show, and the guy said, hey, where's Manziel going tonight? And I said, I think he goes outside the top 20. And the host got so mad at me for saying that. He actually said, we're done. He kicked me off the show right there. I was never invited back. And he ended up going 22nd. And listen, I hope Malik Willis goes number one. I have no, I just think, I don't think he's as talented as Kyler Murray. He had to fight to get his 5th-year extension. I mean, if he was all that and a bag of chips, the Cardinals would have ponied up the money instantly and said, you know what, we need to sign you long-term right now. Let's not even worry about this 5th-year extension. So when I look at Malik Willis, I don't think he's as dynamic as a Murray, and I think the accuracy issues and all the mechanical things, it's fun to have these guys that are athletically gifted, but at the end of the day, that's a short-lived lifespan in terms of teams wanting you to grow in the pocket, and you're unable to do it. He might be able to do it, but I think that hesitation tonight could force him, outside the top round of round one, or I think it's going to push him late. But the quarterbacks are definitely it's an enigma wrapped in a nutshell with a piece of paper. It's so many crazy things with this quarterback class, guys. What are your thoughts? I got to ask you, what are your thoughts on these quarterbacks?
Well, ultimately, Bo, I don't see anyone being a future Hall of Famer. I don't see anybody in this class being a Pro Bowler. Really, I think if you were going to draft a quarterback this year, you would honestly have to draft a guy that you think is just going to be able to stand up straight and not lose you ball games. And that's why I think Kenny Pickett's, in my mind, Kenny Pickett's, Desmond Ridder, and Matt Corral are my 3 best quarterbacks in this draft, because 1, they know how to win. They've all won at their respective universities, and 2, it feels like they're not going to be the difference from you winning, going from 6 wins to 9, but they also don't feel like they're going to be the reason why you go from 6 wins to 3.
Yeah, great point, Drew. Yeah, and I kind of follow the same suit. Desmond Ridder, I talked to some guys or some NFL personnel down at the combine, and the way he commands a room, they said he stepped in and you gravitate towards his leadership, those intangibles that you want in a quarterback position. I think that's going to be a big asset for him this draft night, tomorrow night. If these guys come off the board, so be it. I think the max quarterbacks we see tonight, if we get it, any. I think it will be Pickett, Willis, and then Ridder. I think those will be the 3, and I think tomorrow night, if those guys don't go, then you'll get the Matt Corrals, the Sam Howells, Ridder and company kind of falling into rounds 2 and 3 when it commences tomorrow night. But Ridder is a guy that I think if anybody sneaks up into the first round that we might not be thinking in terms of the quarterbacks, and I know it's not an out of the blue number, but so much Matt Corral. But I think Ridder could be that guy just in terms of his intangibles as a winner in terms of what he was able to do with Cincinnati to put that team in the Final Four of college football, Power 5 conference, playing with the big boys. And we always point to the quarterback, and he was the guy under center during that.
Now, Bo, the two biggest fan base franchises around here, it's got to be the Cowboys and the Chiefs. What do they do tonight? What does Jerry Jones pick? What do they get another weapon for in Kansas City for Patrick Mahomes? What's the idea and thought around those two franchises with what they're going to do in the first round?
I think for the Cowboys, I would look at offensive line or wide receiver. I think that line that was so dominant a few years ago is a shell of itself. It's not what we're accustomed to seeing. And then the wide receiver position, I think when you saw CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper and not all those guys, Michael Gallup not all being on the field at the same time, really hampered Dak Prescott and what the Cowboys offense liked to do, and that was push the ball vertically downfield. So Prescott struggled, the receivers and the offense all struggled combined. So, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, you look at CeeDee Lamb, that was a little bit of a surprise pick, and that was one of the few picks that I actually get right. I don't get very few picks right during a mock draft, but I did get CeeDee Lamb that year. If a talented receiver that falls to him, I wouldn't discount it. I think the NFL mindset now is outscore at all costs. I even look at the Minnesota Vikings sitting there, I think, at 12th. I wouldn't be shocked if they take a wide receiver. You're like, how could they do that? They got Thielen, they got Justin Jefferson. No, but teams just are in the mindset now that, it's all or in and just go and let the defenses kind of deal with the aftermath of it all. And but that said, I think those are, some of the Cowboys' needs, if you will. And I think those are the two positions, wide receiver and offensive lineman. Offensive lineman first, depending on what the best prospect is for him.
All right, Bo, I know you cover the Steelers. I'm a Pittsburgh native, living in Arkansas for 22 years. I know they did their due diligence, visited every quarterback's pro day, and right now a lot of folks have Malik Willis going to the Steelers. I'm not sold on any of the quarterbacks as a franchise QB. Or they're looking to replace Ben Roethlisberger. Obviously not. I'm not sold on Mitchell Trubisky being that either. But there are other things that team needs. Where do you think Pittsburgh goes?
I think they move up. I just did a piece this morning. Most teams, what you hear are 15 to 18 first-round grades on the prospects. So I doubt I doubt the Steelers are much different in terms of what other teams are forecasting as first-round graded guys. I think they did so much homework on the quarterbacks to make sure that they didn't miss something. I don't think it was with the intention that this is what we want. I think it was more of the intention we don't want to be left behind in case one of these guys really do show signs of being a difference maker. That, guy that can be the Bradshaw, the Brent Roethlisberger, the guy that can lead them to Super Bowls. I think they move up. Two guys that I think they could go up to get are Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame, and then Jordan Davis, the defensive interior guy from Georgia. Last year, I remember after one game, Cam Hayward, the anguish and suffering on his face after the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Mixon gashed that defense down in Cincinnati. And I just think if they don't fortify that front, it doesn't matter what quarterback's going to be under center, especially a rookie, they're going to have a long day on the defensive side. So I think those are two moves. Kevin Colbert's last go-around as GM, I'd expect a big splash. I know he's kind of derailed from that Monday down at the press conference at Heinz Field. They don't give you any information, but I would just be inclined to think that it would be hard for him to leave his last draft with the Steelers not making an impact move and trying to bring in a guy that can be a difference maker for a long time with that franchise.
All right, but real quick, because we are up against the break, and I know Mr. Norsworthy asked you this on Tuesday, so you had 2 days to reflect on this. If you want to change your answer, go ahead. Future Hall of Famer, who you gotta pick one here in this draft. Who's it gonna be?
I'll put Derek Stingley. I'm an LSU defensive guy. Patrick Peterson, Derek Stingley. I think in terms of upside, if he plays to his potential, you can mark him down for Canton right now.
Bo, you're good to join us today on draft day number 1. Appreciate your time and enjoy it.
Thank you. And you know what? And I'm not lying to you. I was actually, when Drew said my mock, I thought I would hear where Treylon Burks was going in the first round. I actually can't believe that he didn't make it.
BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs, sports info, and odds. Find all the latest sports developments, including this week's odds for the Masters Championship and the start of Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino and poker games. It's super easy to get started, so join today. Learn why everyone is saying BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on popular sports and games. BetOnline, where the game starts.